Multiplying and dividing fractions. The fun thing here is we basically get to go straight across. I'm going to show two possible methods so that you can pick the one that you are most comfortable with. So I'm going to start off with multiplying, and the idea when we multiply is we get to go straight across. If you're kind of curious why we're working with fractions anyways, we're going to be doing a little bit of probability going into next week. So this is just making sure that we've got the arithmetic skills that we need to be successful with that. When we think about probabilities, we have fractions. Chance of rolling or getting heads is 1/2, right? Something like that. So multiply, we go straight across. So as our first example, we might have 1/12 times 4/5, in which case if we went straight across with our multiplying step, we're going to see that we have 1 times 4 on top, 12 times 5 on the bottom, which is going to give us 4, you might need a calculator, over 60. However, we still need to write our answer in lowest terms, or reduced form, or simplified, however you want to phrase it. So we would need to do what we did in the last section and take this 4 and realize that that 4 is the same as 2 times 2, and then ask ourselves, yes, the number 60 I could write as 2 times 30. So now we've crossed out a 2. And then I could go one step further and say, guess what? I'm going to take that 30 and I'm going to write it as 2 times 15. In which case, when I cross that out and I'm left with a 1 on top, I get a final answer of 1/15. And that works. You can multiply straight across and then simplify down. In this case, we had to simplify twice. You might have recognized that 4 went into 60, in which case you could have just done it in one step. But we work our way down. However, I'm going to give you a hint from the very beginning. When I look at my initial problem, 1/12 times 4/5, my numbers are already a little bit smaller, and I can cancel from the very beginning. So for example, I might recognize that this number on top, this 4, goes evenly into this 12. In other words, I can rewrite my 12 as 3 times 4. 12 is the same as 3 times 4. And now I can say, guess what? I got a 4 on top, I got a 4 on the bottom. Those are going to cancel. And what I'm left with on top is 1 times 1. And what I'm left with on the bottom is 3 times 5. 1 times 1 is 1, 3 times 5 is 15. And we get the same answer. So I think a lot of you are probably going to be more comfortable canceling early, just because the numbers are smaller and it's already kind of broken up. But the choice is completely yours. Let's look at another one. Let's just go random. Here's a good one. Okay. So now, I'm going to go 6/7 times 7/12. And again, I'm pulling this from the assignment that you will be looking at. Now when I'm looking at this particular one, we're still multiplying. Excuse me. But let's look at what we can cancel. So I'm going to cancel first, and right away I see, guess what? I got the same 7 on top, the same 7 on bottom, so both of those cancel, and I'm essentially left with just 1 left over. I've also got the 6 and the 12, and when I look at that 6 and that 12, I see, hey, I can rewrite this 12 as 2 times 6, and now I've got a 6 on top and a 6 on the bottom, which leaves a 1 right there. So if we multiply everything across, on the top I now have 1 times 1, and on the bottom I now have 1 times 2. 1 times 1 is 1, 1 times 2 is 2, and I get a final answer of 1/2. So in this particular problem, there were actually 2 things we could cancel, both the 7s and both the 6's. And what I want you to keep note of is all that matters is whether or not you are on top and on bottom of your fraction. So as long as the 7's were on top and on bottom, it doesn't matter if they're on the same fraction or the two different fractions, you just need one on top and one on the bottom. So that's a little bit of multiplying. There is also going to be some division, and division is kind of nice because for division, what I want you to remember, and you might even remember this from previous lessons, is I like to go with this. We are going to keep, change, flip. And so here's the way we're going to approach this. So say, for example, I give you 1/4 divided by 7/4. And as we approach this, we are going to follow our phrase, keep, change, flip. And here's the idea. You are going to keep the first fraction. It is still 1/4. You are going to change division into multiplication. And then you are going to flip the second fraction. 7/4 becomes 4/7. Keep the first fraction, change the multiplication, flip the second fraction. Keep, change, flip. And now we get to treat it just like the multiplication problems we were doing before. So in this case, I'm going to recognize that I've got a 4 on the bottom and a 4 on top, so I can cancel those out. Nothing else is left to cancel, so if I work myself to multiply straight across, I've got 1 times 1 on top, and on the bottom I've got 1 times 7, which means 1 times 1 is 1, 1 times 7 is 7, and I have my final answer. So this second section right here has some multiplying and dividing. Some multiplication steps you might have multiple things you need to cancel. Sometimes you might only have one thing you need to cancel. You can multiply across first and then simplify, or you could simplify as you go, which I think most of you will prefer to do. So with that, give it a go.